In the shadow of war on a cold, uncertain election day, November 8th, 1864, America faced a moment that would decide whether it remained united or shattered into two separate nations. President Abraham Lincoln, who had borne the weight of the Civil War on his shoulders for 4 tumultuous years, stood for re-election. Victory was anything but guaranteed. The Union Army was battered, the Northern public exhausted, and cries for peace, even at the cost of disunion, grew louder. Lincoln's opponent, George B. McClellan, the former Union general, campaigned on a platform of negotiation with the Confederacy. A McClellan victory would have almost certainly meant a cessation of hostilities, a divided America, and the preservation of slavery in the southern states. Lincoln himself feared for the worst, confessing to his aides that he doubted he would win re-election. The nation trembled at the edge of an abyss. Yet, when the votes were counted on that historic night, the Union's fate turned. Lincoln secured a decisive electoral victory, winning 212 of the 233 electoral votes. The popular vote was closer, but Lincoln's re-election was made possible by a series of critical military victories in the months leading up to November. Union General William Tecumseh Sherman had captured Atlanta on September 2nd, 1864. A triumph that rejuvenated Northern morale. Ulysses S. Grant's unrelenting campaign against Robert E. Lee in Virginia kept the pressure on the Confederacy. Together, these strategic successes ensured that Lincoln would have the political support needed to continue fighting and ultimately win the Civil War. Had Lincoln lost that election, the course of American history would have been dramatically altered. The Union, as conceived in 1776, might have ended in 1864. The very idea of a United States bound by liberty and equality hung by a thread and was saved only through the determination of its people and the resolve of its leaders. Now, 160 years later, 2 cycles of 80 years, the echoes of that historic election are being felt once more. As November 5th, 2024 looms on the horizon, many in America, especially within the Make America Great Again movement, see another defining moment for the country. They fear that a victory for Vice President Kamala Harris could usher in sweeping changes that would transform the very structure of the nation, threatening the balance that has kept the United States a functioning constitutional republic for nearly 2.5 centuries. There's a widespread fear that a Harris presidency with Democratic control of Congress could lead to the expansion of the Supreme Court. This packing of the court could dilute the conservative majority and open the door to rulings that permanently alter the constitutional interpretations, undermining the separation of powers and eroding traditional liberties. Another concern lies with border policies. Conservatives worry that an open border approach could lead to an influx of new residents who, if granted a pathway to citizenship, could dramatically shift the voting landscape. The argument here is that such changes would jeopardize the integrity of elections, tipping the scales and permanently ensuring a Democratic electoral advantage. Perhaps the gravest concern is the potential addition of 2 new states, Washington, D.C. and Puerto Rico, which, could mean 4 new Senate seats, almost certainly occupied by Democrats. This, coupled with changes in electoral laws, could lead to a one-party dominance in the Senate and electoral outcomes, making it nearly impossible for Republicans to regain control and threatening the two-party system that has defined American governance. In 1864, Americans faced an election that would decide whether their country survived. The stakes were existential, and voters had to choose whether to press on through hardship or abandon the fight. Lincoln's re-election preserved the Union, paved the way for the end of slavery, and set the stage for America's future as one nation under God. In 2024, many conservatives argue that the stakes are similarly high, though in a different form. The concern is not a literal division of the country, but a permanent reshaping of American institutions, changes that could strip away constitutional safeguards and lead to what they fear would be an irreversible loss of power and governance. The parallels are striking. Once again, the nation faces a moment where every vote matters, and the consequences could shape the course of history. From Lincoln's victory in 1864 to the ballot boxes of 2024, exactly 160 years, a cycle of 2 80-year periods, separates these defining moments. In both cases, the very essence of the nation is at stake. History teaches that crisis comes in cycles, and every generation is called to defend the American experiment. The question now is, how will this generation respond? November 5th, 2024 could be remembered as another turning point, or a day when America's future slipped from our grasp. The choice, as it was 160 years ago, is up to the people.